What if I told you that by saving a single building, you could accidentally trigger the collapse of Christianity, delay the Renaissance by centuries, and create a world where today's most brilliant scientists would be considered intellectual children? Welcome to the terrifying butterfly effect of preventing the Library of Alexandria's destruction. You think the burning of Alexandria's great library was humanity's greatest intellectual tragedy. One catastrophic fire in 48 BCE that destroyed 400,000 scrolls containing the collected wisdom of the ancient world. But here's what you didn't consider. Maybe that fire was supposed to happen. Maybe preserving all that knowledge would have fundamentally broken the trajectory of human development in ways we can barely comprehend. Let's set the scene. You've just arrived in Alexandria, 48 BCE. Julius Caesar is pursuing Pompey through Egypt, about to make the military decision that accidentally ignites the harbor and spreads flames to the great library. You have one chance to intervene. One moment to redirect Caesar's ships, convince him to use different tactics, anything to save those precious scrolls. It seems like a heroic choice. It seems obvious, but here's where things get interesting. The immediate consequences of your intervention ripple outward like cracks in reality itself. First, the obvious victory. You've preserved complete works by Aristotle, lost plays by Sophocles, advanced mathematical treatises by Archimedes, and medical knowledge that wouldn't be rediscovered for over 1,000 years. Scholars estimate the library contained works representing 1,500 years of human intellectual achievement. You've just handed that gift to posterity. But here's the first crack in your perfect timeline. Those Roman scholars who would have spent centuries painstakingly reconstructing classical knowledge from fragments, they never developed that discipline. The medieval monks who would preserve and copy ancient texts through the Dark Ages, their entire purpose evaporates. The Islamic Golden Age scholars who spent generations translating and expanding upon recovered Greek texts. Without the challenge of piecing together lost knowledge, their methodology never evolves. The real problem isn't what you saved. It's what you prevented humanity from learning how to do. Consider this, the greatest intellectual leaps in human history often came from necessity, from having to rebuild knowledge from incomplete foundations. When Islamic scholars like Al-Khwarizmi developed algebra, they weren't just translating Greek mathematics, they were filling in gaps, making connections, creating new frameworks because the complete originals were lost. When Renaissance thinkers rediscovered Aristotle through Arabic translations, they didn't just absorb his ideas. They questioned them, improved them, ultimately surpassed them. But in your preserved timeline, complete ancient knowledge creates intellectual complacency. Why question Aristotle when you have his complete, unfiltered writings? Why develop new mathematical proofs when Archimedes has already solved everything? The preserved library becomes not a foundation for progress, but a ceiling that prevents it. Here's where the timeline gets truly disturbing. Christianity, in our original history, spread partly because it offered philosophical comfort during the intellectual chaos following Alexandria's destruction. People needed new frameworks for understanding existence when the old certainties burned away. But in your timeline, complete Greek philosophical works remain accessible, providing sophisticated answers to life's big questions. Neoplatonism thrives. The mystery religions of Alexandria maintain their intellectual edge. Christianity never gains the foothold it needs to become dominant. Without Christianity's unifying influence, Europe never develops the shared cultural identity that enables the Crusades, which, for all their horror, also facilitated crucial knowledge exchanges between East and West. The university system, largely developed by Christian monasteries, never emerges. The Protestant work ethic that historians argue fueled capitalism, it never develops. But the most chilling possibility is this. In your timeline, human progress essentially stops in the 4th century CE. Think about it logically. If ancient Alexandria had already achieved peak knowledge in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy, why would future generations push beyond it? You've created a civilization that considers itself intellectually complete. The preserved complete works of ancient masters become sacred texts, studied endlessly but never questioned, never surpassed. China continues developing independently, of course, but without the competitive pressure of rediscovering Western knowledge, the Islamic world never develops its revolutionary scientific methodology. Europe, content with complete ancient wisdom, never experiences its Renaissance rebirth. The scientific revolution never happens because there's no need to revolt against incomplete knowledge. Your intervention has created the ultimate intellectual trap, a world where humanity achieved perfection too early and then stopped trying to exceed it. The butterfly effects compound exponentially. Without the Renaissance, there's no age of exploration. Without Christianity's missionary drive, global trade networks develop completely differently. Without the scientific revolution, the Industrial Revolution either never occurs or happens in a completely unrecognizable form centuries later. Most terrifyingly, consider what this means for today. In our timeline, we reached our current technological level through a specific sequence of intellectual struggles, recoveries, and breakthroughs. Each dark age forced humanity to redevelop critical thinking skills. Each period of lost knowledge created the necessity for innovation. But your preserved timeline might have produced a world where human intellectual development peaked in ancient Egypt and stayed there for 2 millennia. A world where the most advanced technology today might be equivalent to what we had in medieval times. Where questions about the nature of reality, consciousness, and existence were answered so completely by preserved ancient wisdom that no one ever thought to look deeper. Here's the ultimate paradox. By preserving humanity's greatest collection of knowledge, you might have prevented humanity from ever learning how to think. The darkest possibility of all? What if our timeline, with all its intellectual struggles and recoveries, with all its dark ages and Renaissance periods, with all its painful losses and rediscoveries, is actually the optimal path for human development? What if those burning scrolls in Alexandria weren't humanity's greatest tragedy, but its most necessary sacrifice? What if the Library of Alexandria had to burn so that humanity could learn to burn brightly on its own? So here's the question that should keep you awake tonight. If you could save any piece of lost knowledge from history, would you? Or would you recognize that sometimes, forgetting is the most important thing we can do to force ourselves to learn how to remember? What moment in history do you think had to happen, no matter how tragic it seems? Let me know in the comments, because next week, we're exploring what would happen if you prevented the fall of the Roman Empire, and trust me, the consequences are even more mind-bending than you imagine.